I'll be very happy to take any questions you may have. Good morning. I'm from Reuters. And as for the budget market, when do you expect to increase the number of deliveries? As for the ATEX, how many orders do you have? And as for the combat aircraft in India, I just wanted to make sure where you'd reach in terms of your discussions on the tenders for the Navy, and what about a new Rafale contract for the aircraft built in India? As for the Rafale in India, the call for tender in India is for 57 aircraft. Don't ask me why 57. It's just like that. It's 57. And we're also working in India to obtain additional tranches, because we went from 126 first to 36. So as to begin with these first contracts, because the Indian Army was very pushy. They wanted to obtain contracts as fast as possible because of their operational constraints in terms of time. And now they're going to be very active. They're going to try to obtain further contracts. And we're working on this. And I can't tell you when and how, but in 2017, we'll be very busy with this. And once again, that's for India. So Falcon ATEX, we can't give you the name because, as you know, we can't give you the breakdown of sales and deliveries for our Falcons. We give an overall figure. And as for your first question, the market, well, that's a very good question. Well, it first goes through new orders coming in before we start delivering. So new orders coming in, it depends on the markets. Today, I don't believe that the market is going to recover very fast in 2017. And besides that, we feel, because in spite of everything, our customers are very active. They want to test our new planes. There are a lot of discussions. The market is not full of discussions, but they want to take action. And this is related to several phenomena. So in some major countries, there is flattish growth. So we're waiting for growth to recover in some major countries. In the United States, 2016, they were waiting for the elections. They were waiting for the new politics of the new American administration. Now we can hope for some recovery on the American market. We hope that there will be a return of the stability after the announcements made. In Europe, the market is not flat. Things are fine in Europe, especially in Northern Europe. So we're not expecting a recovery overnight. It'll take place little by little. And probably by 2018, I don't expect a real recovery in 2017. But you know, forecasting is very difficult. Do you think the euro is going to go up or is going to go down compared to the dollar? I do not know. The barrel, I do not know if it's going to go up or if it's going to go down. And the Falcon market, well, I cannot really tell you. And the company's policy is to be flexible, adaptable, because some could believe that we adapt the market to our production tools, but I believe that we will adapt our production tool to the market.
Michel Polaco is my name, from Radio France. Regarding the sale of Rafales, we see that thanks to the exports, the French state is disengaging. It's almost interrupting, I would say, its orders for about 3 years. We'll see what happens then. Is this, I mean, do you feel disappointed, let down? What do you feel about that? Now, you talked about the Rafale and the Navy applications, but they want to have the right kind of aircraft carrier. I think they've got a former Soviet one, in the destination you mentioned. So what about future Navy use Rafales? And, I mean, you know, they've got to go on the right aircraft carriers. But for France, says Mr. Trappier, we do see in the figures that France has curbed the deliveries of Rafales a lot. I don't feel let down because I've got export contracts at the moment, and my pace of production of Rafales has gone from 1 to 2 to meet the needs of the export contracts. So more workload on Rafales in Dassault for the moment rather than we had compared to what we had in the past. So that's all right. But you could ask the same question, your second question, about the French Navy. You want to ask the French Navy about the Rafales. Ask them that question, not me. I mean, go to the Air Force as well. I can't answer in their stead. I'm not the one who decided to bring down the French deliveries and export instead. That's the kind of thing you read in the newspapers sometimes. I've got export contracts. I'm very happy proud to have these export contracts. That's one of Dassault's traditions in our DNA. We're now succeeding in making export contracts, and there'll be other contracts, I hope, on the back of those. But I've rarely seen in the history of combat aircraft in the world a stoppage in deliveries of to the armed forces of one's own country like that. It might be about zero for a couple of years, 2019, 2020. It might pick up, but, it was drop by drop, up to the recent past, 2017, one airplane. So, that's the way it is. Somebody speaking without a microphone, sorry. India. Okay, yeah, you asked about India. The aircraft carrier in India that exists is one of Russian origin. The Rafale can land on it. Yes, it can. It can. It can be more efficient than the MiG-29 on board that aircraft carrier. Secondly, the Indians have plans for a new aircraft carrier. They're very aware of the need to do maritime surveillance. They've got neighbors that are densely populated, and they want to do some maritime surveillance. And the naval forces of their neighboring country has some ambitions, and they want to do proper maritime surveillance. So it would be normal for India to redress the imbalance there a bit, because China is growing in terms of power, and they want to have aircraft carriers too. And the Rafale is the smallest aircraft that can land on an aircraft carrier, and we're lucky to have it. The current Russian aircraft carrier has no catapult, but it brings down the performance of the airplane when it takes off, because the maximum takeoff weight won't be the same depending on whether there's a catapult or not. But we can do in-flight replenishment for the Rafale. We've got that possibility. So I think it's better with a Rafale than with a MiG-29 already, as things stand. In the future, what will be the other plane that can be better than the Rafale for an Indian aircraft carrier? I don't see any other plane around. So vertical takeoff, well, then we get into the problems you mentioned earlier. And marine is a very big one. So we're small. We're the small Rafale on the small Charles de Gaulle, but with high efficiency for the airplane. So I think the Indians have got a taste for the Rafale, and I think their appetite will be whetted. We're going to fight for it anyway.
Good morning, Mr. Trappier. Jean-Marc Tanguy. I have 3 questions. First, are you going to create a company with Babcock in the field of services? What is your objective? I think the only activity you're aiming at is not FOMIDEC. And as for land surveillance from your Falcon, because right now they're working over the seas, but there are capacities to make them operate over land. So what are your plans? And have you found something original in the proposals that you see flowering in the programs of our future French presidential candidates? Well, first point, Babcock. Well, we have partnered with Babcock. The story of FOMIDEC has been going on for years now, and it's very difficult in France to make decisions. So, therefore, when we saw that Babcock had a proposal that was very interesting for the Air Force, well, we supported this so that we could support the French Air Force. So we partnered with Babcock so as to provide our competences in this domain that is well recognized for the Air Force in the framework of the school that they'll be developing after the acquisition of Pilatus aircraft. So this is a very gentle partnership, and we are turning towards the French authorities and the Air Force. As for the land surveillance aircraft, yes, we've done a lot of surveillance with Falcons since the beginning of times. Falcons are adapted for surveillance, maritime surveillance, but also electronic war surveillance, Comint-Talent, surveillance of the borderlines. Yeah, and we do have projects in this area, and we have projects for our own armed forces. And we are positioning ourselves in this area. Thirdly, our French presidential candidates. You can ask me this question a little later. We'll wait and see for the moment. We're serving the French authorities as they are today. Of course, we're working with the future candidates. We are trying to explain our problems. First, in terms of Dassault Aviation and also GFAS, so as to explain the defense issues. I just have to tell all the candidates, because you're giving me the opportunity, that defense is virtuous. Virtuous first because we can defend the country, ensure its security, which is normal for a state. So we're a sovereign state. That's an area where the state has to consent to some efforts, especially some budgetary efforts. And secondly, when there are programs in the field of defense, more than 90% of the work is carried out in France. It is carried out in France and in the field of high technology. It's a question of employment, high added value. All this is done in France, and that's very important because, from what I've understood, all the candidates want to fight against unemployment. So this is not social treatment of unemployment, but here we're really taking action, giving jobs in the industrial sector. I'm defending the industrial sector. Industries should remain in France. And believe me, it is difficult. It's not that easy to have industries in France. And since it is high added value, it is sustainable because this allows us to develop technologies that companies in the field of armament can use dually also. They can use it in the civil area. And of course, exports. When there are developments in France, sooner or later we can export, and this brings more euros to France. So it is virtuous from the point of view of our trade balance. So honestly, I don't see how our candidates cannot increase the defense budget. Otherwise, it would be absurd. And we know that they have to make decisions, but defense is a question of French sovereignty, and it's a question of employment. Look at what happened in the United States. When Trump arrived, he increased by some 80 billion the defense budget, which was already at 600 and a few billion. And why is he giving more budget to his industry? Because he knows that the heart of a country is its industry.
Good morning. I'm a journalist with Libération. The 5X and the delay in the engine deliveries, I'd like to talk about. What's your relations now with the manufacturer of the engines? Are there penalties going to be paid? Is there litigation? Are they going to give you a cheaper price? Second is civilian aircraft in general. You said it's harder to sell airplanes now than it was in the past, so you're bringing down your prices. To what extent? Are you discounting your prices? Are you bringing down your profit margins? And next question has to do with industrial relations. You said there won't be any redundancies, but there will be a departure plan signed off in the agreement with the trade union organizations. How many employees will be concerned by the departure plan? On the 5X, for a start, we're working with Safran on this every single day, because the first strong request we made to Safran was to get the engine to work. It's a technical requirement. Second strong demand we made was that they should stick to the new schedule because the old timetable is far behind us. So stick to the new schedule. So we've been working with them to make sure the milestones are abided by. And Safran is putting in all the efforts. They're stepping up, doubling up their efforts. It's a bit late maybe, but now they're allocating lots of people to do the job. And for the last couple of years, they're really putting in a lot of efforts on the Safran side. It's not enough to make efforts. You've got to deliver the goods, so to speak. But there's a cost attached to it first, because when you postpone the delivery of aircraft to your markets, it's lost earnings and it generates additional costs. We're trying to anticipate the fact that these additional costs connected with the retrofits or modifications and delays in the program will be as small as possible, but that'll give rise to offsetting arrangements between Safran and Dassault. These are, commercial negotiations still ongoing. We haven't yet got all the problems behind us, so that's still going on. The second question you asked, I can't read my notes, says Mr. Trappier. Oh, your margins. Yes, that's it. Okay. So, well, I can't tell you how much would be the price drop, because if I said how much, would be a strong indication for our competitors. It weighs on us, and you've seen the results in terms of operating income. We've gone down by 2.5 points. I'm not saying the 2.5 points are only due to that, but in the main they're due to that. That's the main reason. The drop in the headcount then, in the case of the GPEC agreements, we have the forecast skills and jobs agreement. We have early retirement measures. That's really what it's all about. So on the basis of volunteers, we've talked to our employees, and some volunteers have gone forward, a few hundred, but on the basis of who wants to go out on early retirement. There's no redundancy plan, no social plan. People put up their hand and say, okay, I'm interested in going out early on retirement because there's a financial incentive, let's put it this way. It does cost us too. Of course, it's to be found in the accounts in the end, because we've booked a provision to make it possible. Because, we want to manage our affairs prudently. So we book a provision to identify 39 million euros in our accounts so as to make it possible for people to go out on early retirement and bring down slightly our staff numbers.
I come from France Culture. So industrially speaking, will there be partial unemployment? And are you working on the future plans to improve their competitiveness? Does that mean that some parts will be produced abroad? Hakim Kasmi from France Culture. So industrially speaking, do you see some partial or short time working? Are you working on future plans to improve your competitiveness? Will that go through parts that will be increasingly produced abroad to cut costs? And as for the Rafale, with the problems with the F-35 that costs a lot, are you having discussions with other countries that are using F-35s and that are coming back to you now because they are interested in the Rafale now? As for short time working, I'm not in favor of short time working. This measure is possible, but it's an extreme measure. And I think that sending people home, paying for them and not working, that's not ideal. When you are pushed to certain extremes before an industrial plan, we have recourse to this. We had recourse to this in the company a few years ago. So this measure does exist. But this is not the most adapted measure adapted to our context. Secondly, so for the moment, we're not implementing this. The future plans, yes, we're working on this. In the framework of the PIAs, we're contributing to these future plans. And in the framework of our transformations, digital, we are preparing for these future plans. And I asked for this digital to be developed, particularly in the industrial sector, that is in the plans to help the people make sure that the IT comes to the employee in an adapted way, not as IT for the IT expert. It is the worker himself who has to have the right environment. We have to facilitate his environment. We should make his environment more difficult so that he can work better and more efficiently. So the digital plant, yes, we are planning for that. And as for the outsourcing of parts, we are already doing this. So we are continuing. Nothing new here. It's on a case-per-case basis. We are serving some of our plants. As I told you at the beginning, the sites are all the same. But we're doing this on a case-per-case basis. We're doing this regularly, and we're outsourcing a certain number of parts. I want to avoid parts from coming and going. I bring it back, I re-outsource, it costs more. So we want to try to stabilize things based on our strategic lines. We're doing this in France. To give you the example of Argenteuil, the T-12, which is the nose of the aircraft, we keep that in France. We don't outsource that. And there are some small parts that we can outsource. So nothing's ever acquired for the next 30 years. I'm just telling you about the state of knowledge today, the state of the market today. And the key word, it will be flexibility. Now, for the F-35, well, all that we can read is beyond what we can imagine concerning the costs of the F-35. We're talking about some $80 billion to develop this F-35, when a Rafale costs 9 billion euros for its development. So what have we written about the Rafale? And I must recognize that it was not logical to write what all we wrote on the Rafale when we see what all is written about the F-35. You can't imagine the cost of this aircraft. We were supposed to have a low-cost aircraft, but it will be produced with a few thousands of aircraft. It is cheaper than Rafale that is produced only, I mean, there are only a few hundreds of Rafale. So either the American industry is not efficient or Dassault is very efficient. Now, is that going to change anything among our clients? We can hope for that. I was interested in one country, that is Canada. Canada said, well, F-35, too expensive, too complex, that's not what I want. An audit was carried out to say, well, that is going to be a problem. That does not mean that Canada is not going to buy American aircraft in the future. We are candidates, but Canada, the United States, they are neighbors, so they have good relations. But I'm sure about one thing, that is that the countries in Europe that have bought F-35, they will not change their point of view, because I can guarantee that Europe is the American preference in the field of defense, and it's still the case. It is a scandal. We say that Trump is not happy about France, but a European country that's going to buy F-35, are they telling us they're not going to buy F-35s anymore? No. So we're going to make sure that those who have not bought the F-35 don't buy them anymore. But it's very complex, very complicated. So if we take the European countries that are interested, there are two, Belgium and Finland. We are candidates with the Rafale that is cheaper than the F-35, that is European for the European countries, and that should be normally the aircraft that we should buy. We'll see what Belgium and Finland will do. I suggest you go and ask them the question. Ask them whether they're going to buy the F-35 or not. Switzerland is not in Europe. Switzerland is outside of Europe, outside of the EU. And I think that Switzerland is going to change its position after having tried to buy a small aircraft. They will buy the top range, which is a Rafale.
Good morning. I have a couple of questions on the Neuron, then the Rafale in India. For the Neuron, what's the test program planned for 2017? And does that program concern only France or the 6 partner countries in Neuron? And then when will that program reach completion? Is it 2018? And then regarding the Rafale in India, could you give us some details about the Make in India program, the kind of parts, components of the aircraft that will be made in India, and in what conditions, terms and conditions? Well, the second question I can't answer yet because the work is being done. That is, what actual components or parts will be made via our joint venture or with our partners, Safran, Thales, radar components or engine components, or certain activities of those companies that might take place in India. I don't know. It's too early days yet. The offset contract is 50% of the price of the airplane, with ABCD rules that are very complex, but the Make in India idea is what? It's the intent to start off a certain number of fabrications in India with the hope of having other contracts, so as to depreciate the cost of setting up facilities in India by having other contracts coming in. So it's early days yet. I just don't know. It's not that I don't want to tell you, it's just I don't know yet what will be done there. Now, the Neuron. Your other question, the additional program taking place in 2017 was first and foremost a campaign done by DGA in the Bruce Center, so as to measure once again the efficiency, the stealthiness efficiency of the Neuron after a few years of flight time, so as to see how stealthy it was and how it evolves over time, the stealthiness. That's underway. And then we also wish to get this airplane to fly again so that we do some more flight tests as of the autumn of this year, after the summertime, that is. So as to continue on with certain tests, given air defense radar and other kinds of equipment that might be around. Now, it's still mainly French. The other countries are still involved. The industrialists in those other countries are still partners, but it's a French order. Now, until when? Well, when there's a real program, the Neuron will kind of disappear, will phase itself out. But it's enabling us to demonstrate things. I assume the military are making the most of the Neuron flying to go and look at the performance and efficiency of it, so as to prepare for wars of the future. This kind of the spearhead of the future in a way. And we've got to think of the future programs, but also future-proof ourselves technology-wise. So all of these Neuron flights will feed into this process. It's all about working for the future. It'll help us to analyze the performance of a UCAV or a stealth aircraft compared to the more conventional fighter plane or a combat aircraft like the Rafale. I believe a lot in this Neuron and in the complementarity of a small UCAV or a smaller UCAV than a combat aircraft that's stealthy as a complement in conjunction with a more traditional fighter plane. The Rafale will stay around for decades to come. It'll still be operational, at least in the French forces and foreign forces too, of course.
Good morning, Olivier Brochet, Credit Suisse. I have 3 questions. The first, on the Rafale deliveries. So you have sped up the deliveries to Egypt upon the customer's request. What's going to be the impact on the deliveries in 2018 and 19 for you? The second question, on the dividend, stock dividend, your major shareholder, did they tell you about the cash payment of this dividend? And the third question, on the Falcons in the backlog, the price pressure, is it worse than what you got on the Falcons delivered in 2016? So as for the Rafale deliveries, we're not giving any guidance post 2017. You have one in 2017, which is new, 8 Rafales for Egypt. So Egypt, we signed an amendment, and we will deliver 5 more this year. So 5 less to be delivered in the orders for the years after. Qatar will begin its deliveries from the end of 2018 onwards. End of 2018. And India will begin its deliveries from mid-2019 onwards. So here you have the breakdown. We've already delivered, if I calculate, 6 aircraft to Egypt. We still have to deliver 5 this year. 24 minus 6, it's 18 minus 5. We'll have to still deliver 13 in the years after 2018, and after 2018 for Egypt, 24 to Qatar, and 36 for India. So that's not going to change the production. We went to step 2. And the major difference for us, what we need to plan for, is that we have to start deliveries again in France. That'll be from 2021 onwards. That the 21 aircraft, in addition to the 4 in the LPM. So we will go down, we'll slow down from 2 to 1.5 in the coming months because we've started producing in a more intense way to prepare for the years where we'll have to deliver a little more with Qatar, Egypt, and India. So those are the years after 2017. So I'm not answering precisely to that question, not giving you any guidance. And on the second topic, the dividends in cash or stocks? Well, Mr. Dassault is here in front of me. He's the major shareholder, but I don't know if he wants to answer, but I think they have up to the 17th of June to decide. And they will decide whether they take everything in cash, in shares, or a mix. So Mr. Dassault and his family will decide. They have 2 months to decide, but we think it's good to have given them this choice, and I think that the shareholder will make the best avail of this possibility, but I'm not the one to decide. And the third is the Falcon. Pressure on the prices on our orders. Well, the deliveries today, as you've seen, the price issue is weighing on the aircraft which are in our backlog. It's on a case-per-case basis, and what is also weighing on our results are the pre-owned aircraft, because as I told you, we take the pre-owned aircraft back at a certain date, we sell them off again at a certain date, and that's not an investment, you know, pre-owned aircraft. There is a depreciation. It is weaker, but it's because of the market, and there's a depreciation on the pre-owned aircraft market.
Pierre Tran, Defense News.
Yes, Pierre Tran is my name. I'm from Defense News. Good morning. What is the situation with the United Arab Emirates? And what about Canada too? Could you update us on those geographies? Thank you. Firstly, the United Arab Emirates, we support them a lot with the Mirage 2000/9. That's important for Yemen, so we've got to support them with that. Now, the 2009 is, of course, a very good aircraft. And Mr. Dassault would agree with us on that, the 2000-9. So it's a very good airplane, but as you know, the Mirage 2000, they're all very good planes. So I don't think we ever saw wing fatigue, but in the F-16 you might have seen it. So it's a long enduring aircraft. We're not good salesmen because we're making them too robust, our aircraft. Anyway, the Emirates manifested their interest in the Rafale. I think, therefore, that the operations with the Mirage 2000-9 they're letting it go past for the moment, and they will turn quite naturally, like all the users of the Mirage 2000. It's true for the French Air Force, Egypt, Qatar, India. They'll all move towards the Rafale as a natural process, I think. And there's a whole campaign that's going to continue in terms of discussions around the Rafale there. Now, there are the elections coming up and so on. These aren't times which are very conducive to speeding up such talks in that arena for the moment. Anyway, Canada. Canada can't say much more for now. We have provided an information set to Canada that was done last summertime, and since then we've had no news. So there's been toing and froing, of course, but you know, further information has been required from certain makers, including Dassault, and we've followed the whole debate through the newspapers. We've heard certain things from the newspapers. Some chiefs of staff say you don't want to buy the F-18. It's a bit vague and woolly what's happening over in Canada. We're not quite sure. We're, you know, having a look at what's happening. It's always interesting to see the criticism levied at the F-35 by certain people. It's a pity to, I'm sorry for repeating myself, but you know, in communication, we've got to keep on repeating things. But it's a pity to have to go across the Atlantic to hear certain criticism about the F-35, including in the US too. Whereas in Europe, people are fascinated by the F-35 for some reason, in countries which have purchased it.
Don't you think that there's a lot of mystery over the Falcons? Because if you look at the Gulfstream activity, Bombardier's activity, and Dassault Aviation, they're going through bad times in terms of their business aircraft, and that cannot really be explained. The aircraft have better performance. You can go from Paris to Hong Kong directly. It's very economical, and you've brought down your prices. And these clients have not just vanished in thin air. And I hear that the rich are becoming even more rich. And what are these rich people doing with their money if they don't buy business jets anymore? So when will this dire strait end, according to you? Or do you think it's going to go on for a long time still? Well, thank you for this play on words, mystery. Mystère is the first name of Falcon. So Falcon is a mystère, and mystère is a Falcon. Now, when we compare ourselves to Gulfstream, we have to compare apples with apples. And the Gulfstream today benefits from a product that they have developed and they're selling very well. It's the top range, which is the G650, which has a higher range than our aircraft because it is the ultra-long range, above 7,000 nautical miles. So our latest is 6,500 nautical miles. So this G650 aircraft was sold well. The operational needs of certain companies, rich people, as you call them, in the western coast of the United States. That's because they want to go to Asia, because the center of the world has moved towards the Pacific rather than the Atlantic. So crossing the Pacific is a very long distance, and to have aircraft that have these very long ranges is interesting. And the aircraft was available. So there were a lot of sales of G650, and we had no sales at all. And Bombardier suffered too. But they have an aircraft that is called Global 7000 that was delayed, but sooner or later it will be ready. So this is a range where Gulfstream sold well. And the second remark, considering your question, is that our clients are companies first and foremost. These aren't rich people companies. They are rich. They are rich. Doesn't mean that they're doing anything with their money. They have a board with shareholders that ask for the accounts, and they want profitability. So they can't just buy anything anyhow. There are boards that decide. There are experts, because buying an aircraft is an investment for a company. And considering the drop in the prices of pre-owned aircraft, this delays the purchasing of new aircraft. So all kinds of companies are interested in buying aircraft from us. They are loyal clients of Falcon aircraft. They say, yeah, we'll buy, but not this year, next year. We're going to keep your Falcon for some longer time. These are Falcon users. So this is true for everybody. It's true for Falcon, for Gulfstream, and for Bombardier. So the price factor, of course, it has a role to play, because we are bringing down our prices, but the others too, you see. So there's a relative effect, and there is a fight, and there is a competition. So when the pre-owned market will slow down, then we will have better sales. But it was very flat in 2016. Now, when the pre-owned market will start moving again, then you, the observers, and we, the aircraft manufacturers, we can say that the next step will be a clearer recovery in our sales. But I'm saying this, but it might not be true. I mean, this market has a lot of ups and downs, a lot of fluctuations, so we'll see I'm quite optimistic. I think that there will be a new day. We at Dassault, we have to go through this very delicate phase in terms of Falcons. Good, we have exports of Rafale, so we are not too much in difficulty, just a little bit, and we're preparing for the future. And we are coming up with new aircraft, the 8X this year, the 5X in 2020, and other aircraft in the future, I hope.
Alors, le futur plus tard, est-ce que la logique par rapport à ce que vous dites?
Now, regarding what you were saying earlier, wouldn't you extend the 5X, have a longer version, I mean, physically, of the 5X, given what you were saying earlier? Is that not a possibility for the future? Well, okay, you put it in your words. The 5X, I keep on repeating myself, I must see it in existence first, the 5X, first start. Secondly, the fuselage, as we've planned to do it on the 5X, is no doubt an important trend. Certain amount of cabin comfort, and you'll have seen also that the size is getting bigger. Starting off with the Americans, they have the biggest aircraft on the market, so it's good to enlarge the cabin in Section 2. So all of our future airplanes will have to be with a cabin size like the 5X. Now, after that, in an airplane, you've got to put in the wings and so on, and that will give you the performance of the plane too in a certain way. So the wing has to be adjusted, and all the equipment and fittings, that's changing a lot. The electronics are changing a lot. So each new airplane is, has lots of novel features on board. It's not just a matter of lengthening the 5X, because if you lengthen it without changing the engines because they're not powerful enough for a bigger airplane, or if you don't change the wings, well, you remain with the performance of a 5X even with a longer aircraft. But it'll be heavier too, so it won't be as highly performing as your 5X was, you see? Anyway, this is what aircraft manufacturers know from the inside, and in the coming few years we'll come up with planes that will meet the criteria probably that you're talking about.
Okay, if there are no more questions, I'd like to thank you for attending this meeting. I'd like to remind you that 2017 will be a Bourget air show year. I'll meet some of you at the E-base in Geneva before we meet this summer for the presentation of our half-yearly results. Thank you.